Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and patch 9.1 is looking to shake up the meta for PvP going forward. There's a lot of different PvP adjustments that have been added into the game over the PTR testing, and all this is going to be available live to us in about a week or so. In this video, I want to go over highlighting every single class change that has happened in regards to PvP of patch 9.1. In a previous video a couple days ago, we covered class changes, the PvE side of things, certain legendaries, certain playstyles, certain adjustments and talents, so you should definitely go watch that video that primarily deals with the PvE things, because some of those PvE stuff is going to bleed into PvP. In this video, we will just talk about the PvP stuff, the new honor talents, anything to note for PvP content. So let's take a look at how each class is evolving and what kind of tools are they getting to play with when going into this next new build. Starting off with Death Knights, we have Spell Warding, which will allow Rune of Spell Warding to apply to yourself passively with 100% increased effect. The short version of Spell Warden is every time you take a damage from a spell ability, you have a chance to give a shield that protects you from magic damage, which works out quite consistently often, has an animation like a AMS but blue, and it's actually quite a nifty ability. Death's Echo allows you to Death Advance, Death Decay, Death Grip one additional extra time, so it could give Death Knight a little bit more grip capability to disrupt healers, and also more mobility with Death's Advance. Strangler returns, giving Death Knights a blanket silence, which is very deadly versant against classes that are caster heavy. It looks like Blizzard is giving Death Knights very caster oriented tools to work with. For Blood Death Knight spec, Blood for Blood has been changed a little, where Heartstrike will do more damage at a cost of health, which Blood Death Knight, since they steal health from enemies, makes them very vampire-esque. Decomposing Aura becomes a Blood Death Knight only honor talent, which I wonder if this will give any leverage for Blood Death Knights in PvP at all. And for Last Dance, they kind of toned back the negative drawback of the honor talent. Frost Death Knights gain Bitter Chill that gives your Chain of Ice a haste reduction on enemies. Dead of Winter no longer reduces the radius, allowing you to get that AoE stun potential. Death Chill radius got buffed a little bit. Delirium got reworked, so Howling Blast will give you the full benefit of Delirium instead of having to stack it up 2 times. And Shroud of Winter is a new aura that Frost Death Knights get as an honor talent that reduces the range of abilities of enemies by 30%. Where this will be useful is if a Death Knight is next to a Frost Mage trying to polymorph your healer while you are next to the Frost Mage, that polymorph isn't actually going to be 40 yards, it's going to be a little bit shorter in range. Unholy Death Knights gain Necrotic Wound, which replaces Necrotic Strike. Popping Festering Wounds on an enemy applies a necrotic wound to the target for 12 seconds, absorbing 5% of all healing per wound popped. This can stack up to 30%, but the duration does not refresh, so a Death Knight going for a full Apocalypse build, popping all those Festering Wounds, can stack up a Necrotic Strike effect on a singular enemy. And it also works with the Cleave, Death and Decay, Scourge Strike mechanic. Doom Burst allows your sudden Doom Death Glow procs to also pop 2 Festering Wounds, slowing down the target considerably. Necrotic Aura is going to be specific to Unholy Death Knights. Life and Death is going to apply a little bit easier, working off of your Virulent Plague rather than Festering Wound, but its healing effect is not as potent, but I think this will still be better in large group PvP situations. And don't worry about Raise Abomination, that has been dropped back down to 1.5 minute CD. Some of the Demon Hunter changes include getting an honor talent of Glimpse, where Ritual Retreat will actually provide you immunity to CC until you land. So as a Demon Hunter, if you can get some airtime, it could be pretty good to dodge certain CC or certain abilities that would otherwise kill you. Blood Moon will give you ability to use Consume Magic in an AoE and granting you 5% extra leech, which could maybe be good against certain caster classes. Chaotic Imprint is an interesting one where Throw Glaive will apply a debuff to an enemy, making them take damage from certain schools of spells. Maybe pairing Demon Hunters with a Shadow Priest and getting lucky on a Shadow Chaotic Imprint could increase damage for your group. Some of the honor talents that have been removed are Eye of Letharus, Mana Break, Mana Rift, and Cover of Darkness, replaced with a different Cover of Darkness, which increases the duration and radius of your darkness a little. Isolated Prey makes you a deadlier killer, especially when you're paired 1-to-1 against the enemy. allowing certain abilities like Eye Beam if it hits one target, makes the enemy debuff taking more damage from you, Fell Rush will generate significant amount of fury, and Chaos Nova will be a longer stun. Demonic Origin's negative effect has been toned down a little, down to 10 seconds of shorter metamorphosis. They also done some buffing for the baseline Imprisoned for PvP, and Mortal Dance got renamed from Mortal Rush to Mortal Dance, which makes your Blade Dance apply the Mortal Strike effect on enemies instead of your Fell Rush, which hopefully will give Demon Hunters a little bit more mobility and control of where they go, because having to charge through enemies in order to set up your Mortal Strike effect was a little bit difficult and sometimes left you kind of out in the open arena without any mobility. For Druids, we start with Boomkins. Starburst is a new honor talent being added. Basically, whenever you drop down Starfall, you have these stars that you can pick up or lead enemies into. Upon picking up the star, it'll try orbiting around you. That'll do damage to enemies when they touch you and knock some up, which should be an interesting toolkit to maybe bring into RPGs, maybe useful in arenas. High Winds also added for Bounce Druids as well as Alkan Adept, which can give you on 2 stacks of Alkan Frenzy an instant cast Cyclone or an Entangled Roots, which could be a very interesting combo when playing up against melees to turn the CC around on them. Feral Druid saw a lot of changes. Freedom of the Herd is going to be usable more often. There's some limitations on Ferocious Wound. High Winds was also added. King of the Jungle adjusted. Leader of the Pack now works with casters as well. And Wicked Claws gives Feral Druids ability to apply a Mortal Strike effect upon enemies. This Mortal Strike effect stacks up twice from your Rakes and Rips, give it spread to multiple enemies, and stacks up to a maximum of 20%, which is actually quite good, which will allow Ferals a little bit more Mortal Strike for team compositions. Guardian Druids are becoming a little bit more tanky, growth protection allowing your party a little bit extra defensiveness, especially when you're trying to hold the flag in the base. Emerald Sleeper also does give you a quite faster cooldown reduction, which will probably be very, very strong with some of the bear tanking strats when it comes to dealing with rogues and having to manage yourself solo or waiting until help arrives. Rest of Druid saw very, very slight adjustments when it comes to PvP honor talents in particular. Every spec of Hunter is going to be able to play with Tranquilizing Darts, which has some debuffing mechanic to it. Chimera Sting, which replaces all of your stings, allowing you to rotate from one sting into the next, starting with a 90% slow into a full-blown blanket silence into 20% reduced damage and healing. Also, Wild Kingdom will let you swap your pets to a cunning pet, which might give you more flexibility with which pets you could run with. Beastmastery saw adjustments with Kindred Beast, which looks like a Beastmastery update, but it's actually available for survival as well, where your pet main active ability is going to be reduced in CD by 50%. They also redesigned Beasts Within as well. Marksman saw a stun added into the game as an honor talent with consecutive concussion. Concussive shots will slow the movement by additional 20%, so it's going to be a better slow, and using 3 steady shots on a concussed target will stun them for 4 seconds, which is a stun that can be repeated over and over and over. There was a slight buff to the ability of Arcane Blast for Arcane Mages to a multiplier of 1.2 extra damage within PvP scenarios. Dampen Magic as an honor talent for all 3 specs of Mages has been removed. Arcane Mages gain an honor talent of Arcanosphere, which allows them to build up the sphere and then shoot it forward, which travels through walls and will do a bit of a knockback. The more you charge it up, the more damage it will do. Together with Kleptomania becoming an arcane-only honor talent, so only arcane mages with all this mana to spell steal will be able to take beneficial buffs from enemies. We saw mostly damage buffs for fire mages, with Ring of Fire being a very interesting, kind of like a reverse of Ring of Frost. Instead of freezing enemies, it'll just do damage to them. Controlled Burn should give fire mages a little bit more consistency when it comes to doing damage outside of combustion. And World of Flames as an honor talent has been adjusted slightly. Frost mages, and this isn't added in the list, but their baseline frostball damage is increased significantly. They also gain a new honor talent of Ice Wall, which literally creates line of sight wall that enemies can't bypass. Burst of Cold is going to be more bursty, and Deep Shatter has got nerfed, but with the buffs to the baseline frostball damage, it actually ends up being, I think overall, either a net nothing happens or a slight net positive. We got some Brewmaster Monk changes, with Nimble Brew actually providing ACC immunity to your allies, which could be interesting, and Rodeo should give you a little bit more gap closers if you're not using the ability of Clash often. Windwalker saw very slight utilitarian group updates and CC changes, but the bulk of changes for monks was actually for Mistweaver, with them getting abilities like Dematerialize for a little bit more rogue counteraction, with abilities like Eminence giving them ability to teleport while stunned. Peace Weaver given extra benefits towards revival, Refreshing Breeze giving you a little bit more dispel ability, Thunderous Focus Tea giving you extra uses with different abilities in terms of PvP, and in the process swapping out some of the honor talents and basically giving them an improved version of them, which hopefully will put Mystery Monks on the map when it comes to arenas as maybe even RBGs. Paladins of all specs gain the ability for Judgment to clear poisons, diseases, and magic effects for allies with your aura, which means Retribution Paladins actually get a magic dispel. Holy Paladins are mostly seeing a little bit of a tuning when it comes to their healing in PvP. Looks like to slightly improve the AoE output, but nerf the single target healing a little. Proud Paladins gain an interesting honor talent for PvP. When you are healed by an ally, allies with your aura gain 5% more damage and healing for 5 seconds. Finally, for Red Paladins, we have mostly adjustments in terms of how abilities work, making Ultimate Retribution slightly better. Lawbringer is going to be more of a cleave capability rather than constant percentage damage to your primary target. Vengeance Aura or a Reckoning slightly redesigned, just a very bit. And Jurisdiction given quite a significant reach for certain Paladin abilities going forward. There was an honor talent for Priest added for improved Mass Dispel to be able to snipe off those big Mass Dispels a little bit quicker. Blizzard took the steps with Disc Priest to add him a new talent of Inner Light and Shadow, which gives him a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more healing capabilities if they take the talent. And they've also tried to kind of add a bit extra damage to the playstyle of your Disc Priest, while also improving on the aspects of the Atonement healing, whereas the Priest is able to do damage and on any allies affected by a buff of Atonement converts a portion of the Priest's damage into small healing for your group. Holy Priest also saw a few honor talents added, like Sanctify Ground working off of your Sanctify ability instead, which has a cooldown reduction element. PvP healing of Flash Heal has been buffed a little bit. Greater Fade has gotten nerfed slightly, together with a couple small adjustments as well. Shadow Priest saw a new honor talent, Megalomania, which gives them Surrender to Madness as a talent, and instead of almost killing you or basically killing you, it'll actually bring you up to 35% health upon ending, which gives Shadow Priest a 1.5 massive cooldown to use. Void Volley provides a big chunk of damage, although a little bit random where these Shadow Crashes fall, but when they do slam an enemy, they'll also cause them to get horrored, which isn't something that breaks to damage, which could potentially be good in group situations. Siphon has a little bit more health, and the same Holy Priest change with Greater Fade is also being applied to Shadow Priest as well. All three rogues are going to share these new updates. First of all, Mark of the Master Assassin is going to have a shorter duration PvP, which might curb the rogue 100% crit openers. Dismantle is getting added for all three specs. Also, Thick as Thieves returns, which grants your ally 15% more damage while Strix is up. Maneuverability has been changed as well, so it now breaks roots, not just slows. Rogues are losing some honor talents, at least in the Assassination field, that didn't have too much play. It is going to replace with a different Creeping Venom, which has now stacks that will continuously reduce movement speed of an enemy. Hemotoxin will allow Shiv extra Mortal Strike effect to be even deadlier, and Elix Assassination is looking really good going forward. Intent to Kill is going to be a little bit more consistent if you do end up picking up the honor talent to stay on your target of the Vendetta. Next, we have some subtle to rogue changes with Cold Blood as well as Dagger in the Dark being either removed or almost removed, with Dagger in the Dark being nerfed quite significantly. Shadowy Duel will only last 5 seconds. Silhouette, however, has been buffed a little, so it's a little bit better to use in groups. Thieves Bargain got adjusted, where it's a bit more of a bargain. You do get cooldown reduction on Shadow Blades, Vanish, and Faint, but whenever you use any of those abilities, you do 10% less damage, so much for a bargain. And Distracting Mirage is an interesting ability where Distract will put a Mirage behind the enemy, letting you teleport to the Mirage while the buff for this ability is up. Then we have some out-rogue changes, like Control as King will grant you energy when you kidney shot the enemy, and Cheap Shot will grant you free slice and dice. Drink Up Your Hearties heals your baseline for a little bit more, and will also apply healing for allies as well. Endurant Brawler will kind of capitalize on the out-rogue not in stealth playstyle by giving you more stamina and extra chances to Sinister Strike. Float Like a Butterfly will allow you to gain some defensive value from consuming calm points into finishers. There's a couple other changes sprinkled in there as well, but one of the bigger ones would be Sinister Strike actually got buffed for Outlaw, as well as Blade Flurry will allow you to do 60% damage cleave to enemies within PvP, which could potentially allow Outlaw some actual cleave capabilities. And we got a notable one here, First Conduit, to talk about. Cloaked in shadows. Normally this allows rogues a shield as soon as you pop in a stealth, but now this shield in 9.1 will only last for 4 seconds, which will make it a lot less consistent. Most rogues were able to use Cloaked in Shadows Absorb in order to catch a re-stealth and then not let the damage over time ability knock him out of stealth. You can imagine how easily a rogue can utilize this to stun the enemy, go behind the pillar and re-stealth with some dots, or even just vanish from sight and not be found even as bleeds are ticking down on him. For Shamans, we have a general change with Unleashed Shield, which will consume your active elemental shield, whether it's a lightning shield, earth shield, or water shield. Consuming a lightning shield actually gives you a knockback on whoever you are targeting. Earth shield will root the enemy for 3 seconds, and water shield will summon a whirlpool for 6 seconds onto the target, reducing the amount of healing they get while they stand in it, which will give restoration shamans quite a lot of offensive play, but also it gives a knockback for a spec like enhancement and roots that you can almost spam. For ally shamans, we see Seasoned Winds, where interrupting an enemy's cast with wind shear decreases the amount of damage you take from that school of spell for 12 seconds. Static Field Totem, which will apply a totem with kind of like this chain link electric fence, where enemies can't leave the totem or go inside of the totem area, but they can kill the totem to remove the effect. Controlled Lava also got redesigned. Flame Shock will tick more often, so it means more procs, but if the enemy does dispel those Flame Shocks, then there will be a volcanic eruption under them, knocking them up in the air, doing quite a bit of damage. For enhancement, we saw Seasoned Winds as well as Static Field Totem also make it into their toolkit, with a very slight adjustment to Ethereal Form as well. Rest of Shamans got an auto talent of Living Tide, which could make Healing Tide Totem a lot stronger for PvP, and Healing Rain healing is increased very ever so slightly. For Warlocks, it should be mentioned that Sacral Lash Dark Strike legendary has been adjusted. It'll actually prolong an active curse on the enemy instead of giving you a passive slow with Corruption, which is given slightly more damage to your Corruption, can give you a permanent curse of exhaustion as long as there's no caster to dispel a curse, but it's gonna be probably a lot less potent than the magic slow the Corruption applied. Base Warlock Honor talents are Shadow Rift, which will conjure a rift under target's feet. After 2 seconds, it'll teleport all enemies caught under it to your demonic circle, which can give some very interesting results when it comes to lining that up together with crowd control. Casting Circle has been adjusted ever so slightly, and they fixed an issue with rampant afflictions for Affliction Warlock. Afi itself got very slight tuning, very small adjustments when it comes to Honor talents. Demonology got a new Honor talent, Fell Obelisk, which is kind of like a Warlock totem with a bit of health. Upon using it, the demons near your Fell Obelisk will actually have their auto attack speed increased and cast time reduced by 20%, which makes them a little bit more deadly, especially when you got a full zoo of them. Also, Call Fell Lord has been buffed significantly, definitely benefits pretty heavily from Fell Obelisk, and is now going to have a slightly different cooldown. It's not added to this list, but the Chaos Bolt damage of your Chaos Bolting Destra Warlock is increased slightly, so you won't need the Focus Chaos talent. Bonds of Fel has also been added, where it'll kind of drop this gem, tie in enemies to it. If any of the enemies leave this area around the gem, it'll explode for a bunch of fire damage split amongst enemies. It's quite a really good utility to throw in as extra burst damage when you know enemies are going to try to run away or chase after you. For general changes, Warriors saw Warbringer being added as an honor talent, which will allow charge to root enemies, and it's not added, but it also does a decent amount of damage. It actually seems to be pretty good. It's a pretty good ability to kind of cleave enemies as you charge into them. Demolition has also been changed a bit. It'll do slightly more damage when it comes to hitting enemies with a shield to be even more punishing. Fury Warriors finally got a Mortal Strike effect in terms of Slaughterhouse, which is something you're going to be able to stack up on the enemy and should be able to maintain it quite a bit, especially noting that Rampage isn't actually a 4-part ability. During Rampage use, you actually hit enemies with Rampage 4 times in a row. So stacking it might sound really weird on paper, but in practice it ends up being a little bit easier to maintain. That was a long video to put together. I'm pretty sure I might have missed a thing or two. So if I missed anything at all, please let me know in the comments below. I try to go with every single official update that Blizzard has released so far for patch 9.1, trying to cover every single honor talent and every small update that has been added for PvP, noting if there were any corrections either on screen or within my voice in order to try to give you guys as up-to-date information There might have been some things that I missed, so I do apologize, because this was a long list. There is a lot happening in terms of the actual honor towns, which I think are going to be pretty game changing in terms of how we play BGs and arenas. There's a lot of stuff to take a look at for 9.1 PvP. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I really do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about these updates? And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.